If you're growing watermelon, you have to watch this. But what I'm going to show you today will work for squash and multiple plants. Whether you're growing them now or in the later on in the fall, or even in the winter if you're in an area where you can grow. But if not, remember this for spring. Hi, this is Robbie from Southern California, and this is amazing. This is something I learned this year that I didn't know. I did not know you can double crop with watermelon. Because here's the thing, a lot of people have this notion that with watermelon, and maybe it's the big one, but with the sugar babies, I know a lot of you do it, they pull the water. They stop watering weeks before the watermelon come off. They say it sweetens it up, and this is what I've heard. I've never done that. All the watermelon we grew this year, everything, and they're almost all picked. I have one more in the chair garden to pick. I usually leave it on because I've got some already in the house reading, and knowing that I won't eat it for probably 3 or 4 days, I leave it on the plant. Doesn't mold or anything that way when it's outside, but sometimes when you bring something in, if you don't store it properly, and I don't want to store everything in the fridge because I want it fresh, sometimes it can start to decay in the house. It's off the mother plant, it's in the house, it's a different environment, and nature tries to take it back. But I have noticed by leaving it in the elements outside on the plant, covered in tulle, you don't want anything to get it, a lot of times it will last longer. Well, let me tell you, Gary's got a couple in his garden too we're going to pick. These watermelons were grown that you saw this year. This one had 3. There's 3 plants in there. I grew 3 watermelon in there. This has 2 plants. Each plant grew 1 watermelon. Now we just took them all off. I finished that the other day. So there's no more watermelon in here, but that and that are not growing the same. And I had to step back and wonder why. Well, it didn't take long, then a couple seconds to figure out what's going on here. This plant, the ones in here, all 3 plants, I should say, there is a half a dozen watermelon growing. And we're not talking just tiny ones. Look at the size. They're growing like overnight, really fast. There's one, there's one. There's one down there. I know you don't see the little ones. There's a couple little ones there. Here's another small one, but look at this one. There's a big one there. And there's more. There's another one back there. They are taking off. This plant just bursted into life. So let's walk around and explain on the other side in a few seconds what is going on. But as you'll see, what do I have in here? And if you're with me all the time, you know what that is. There's a green bucket in there and a yellow bucket in there. That's a 2 system. That is a compost in place system. Now, yes, I've got one there, but there's issues with that. Big issues. Though I only used, 2 flower pots, and yeah, they're smaller, it still should have worked. Let's walk around and I'll show you what's going on. Okay, let's lift this up and look inside, and I think you're going to be surprised what is going on here. Now, as you can see, whoa, it is packed, absolutely packed with earthworms. They are feeding on everything I pick up all the time. I pick up zucchini leaves, I put in there kale, any of the brassicas actually, even leaves off the watermelon, and I stuff them back in there. It keeps everybody happy. It keeps the earthworms in there and the microbes. If you don't have earthworms, I've talked about it, as long as the food matter is being broke down, the plants will do great. So all that is breaking down, and it's constantly feeding these 3 plants in here. As soon as the big watermelons were removed, the plant was told, let's go for it. We have enough food. Let's go again. And look how big they are already. Look how strong and beautiful the plants look. Aren't they gorgeous? And they're flowering and everything. They are doing fabulous. Look at that. More flowers coming up there. I see more little watermelon all over there. How many are going to grow here? I don't know. I might leave more than 1 per plant this time, because I know after this, we're going to start going into, in about 2 months, the cooler season, and I don't think they'll have enough time to develop. But even now, I should have enough time to get another crop. Now, with all the food that's coming out of here, this is a constant food source for these plants. This is an 18-gallon tote with just leaf matter. You know how I fill all my totes. That is what's feeding them. Now, this one, you say, well, wait a minute, there's another one. Here's the problem. Do you see this? Do you see this plant? I'm not sure if I can get you in there to see it. There's peppers growing on the top that grew in there. And see that? So though I am composting in place, this squash plant that grew out of that flower pot is pulling the nutrients. So this watermelon plant is not getting the same nutrients as this one is. There's nothing growing in here but some walking onions on the top. And then of course, all the microbes and earthworms on the bottom. But that one, multiple things are going on. Peppers on the top, which is fine, but peppers are kind of heavy feeders in a way, like tomato plants, but this squash plant. So all the nutrients that should be going into this watermelon plant isn't. That's a good lesson. Look at the tomatoes. My goodness, I've got to get those off and freeze those. So now we know that nutrition to these plants are very, very important. You know it and I know it. And we can double our crop in our watermelon if we have enough warm weather. We should have warm weather enough for these watermelon to grow. I've had watermelon grow to size in 30 days ready to eat. So since the plant is well established, the watermelon shouldn't be a problem. So in about 3-4 weeks, we should have some fruit ready to pick. Maybe even sooner, because it's amazing how quickly some of this can grow. Whether we'll be able to triple crop, I don't think so, but I am very ecstatic to be able to double crop. If I would have pulled the water and only watered it once in a while and my plant stressed out and died back a little, it probably would not have taken off in the fashion in which it did to grow all these new watermelons, because the plant would have been stressed. I watered my plants during the heat wave twice a day. I would come out here and water this 18-gallon tote and water the bucket because I wanted to make sure anything in there, they need water too. So you don't want any of this to dry out and it will run through. This bucket's got holes on the bottom, goes down into the green bucket, and the green bucket that only has plant matter in there, which is being broken down by everything, is going back into the soil. So there's holes in everything. Holes. You always need holes. You need drainage because you would drown your microbes, you would drown your earthworms. This has been really an exciting find for me. And I never had a single one split. There was one that split, but it was an old one that didn't grow and it was only that big and I just left it and the plant died back. I don't know why. I think the plant was too old. That one split. But any of the ones on a healthy plant, I didn't have any issues with splitting, continued to water it. And let me tell you something. The watermelon has been so incredibly sweet. We've been eating watermelon every night. We split it in half. Gary and I take a quarter. And then the next day we have more. We even share it with the dogs and they love it. So I hope I've given you ideas on how you may be able to get your plants growing. And keep in mind, if your plants aren't doing well, and you're growing in a potting soil or a soil you bought, store-bought soil, it may not have enough nutrients. You can add the nutrients, whether you add it with a pitcher, and you know all about my pitchers, or you add it in by a 2 system. You can dig a hole and drop it in there, but this really works so good because by doing it this way, you bring the microbes in there to live in there. You bring the earthworms in there. If you can find some around under flower pots or rocks, go ahead. But if not, it still works and it will feed your plants. So I hope I've given you an idea on watermelon. If you still have some watermelon plants growing, they still look green and alive, go ahead and try putting some plant matter in there with maybe a 2-system bucket and see if you can get some extra fruit before the season's over. And if not, remember this for next year. Put it in right away. Have a 2-system, and what is going in there? Nothing that costs you. It's free. You're putting leaf matter in there. You're finding anything, and you're putting leaves in there, and that's what's going to go in the bottom bucket. Anything that you find, you just lift it up. Do it as often as you want. You want to do it every day? Do it every few days. Just go through, clean up your garden, take all the yellowing leaves off that you don't need, and toss it into your 2-system. Free? What else can you ask for? I can't think of anything better. With that, have a great day. Don't forget to eat what you grow. How cool. Bye-bye.